Rome at the outset was a city-state under the government of kings. Liberty and the consulate were institutions of Lucius Brutus. Dictatorships were always a temporary expedient. The decemviral office was dead within 2 years, nor was the consular authority of the military tribunes long-lived. Neither Cinna nor Sulla created a lasting despotism. Pompey and Crassus quickly forfeited their power to Caesar, and Lepidus and Antony their swords to Augustus, who, under the style of prince, gathered beneath his empire a world outworn by civil broils. But while the glories and disasters of the old Roman Commonwealth have been chronicled by famous pens and intellects of distinction were not lacking to tell the tale of the Augustan age, until the rising tide of sycophancy deterred them, the histories of Tiberius and Caligula, of Claudius and Nero, were falsified through cowardice, while they flourished and composed when they fell under the influence of still rankling hatreds. Hence my design to treat a small part, the concluding one, of Augustus's reign, then the principate of Tiberius and its sequel, without anger and without partiality, from the motives of which I stand sufficiently removed. When the killing of Brutus and Cassius had disarmed the Republic, when Pompey had been crushed in Sicily, and with Lepidus thrown aside and Antony slain, even the Julian party was leaderless but for the Caesar. After laying down his triumviral title and proclaiming himself a simple consul content with tribunician authority to safeguard the commons, he first conciliated the army by gratuities, the populace by cheapened corn, the world by the amenities of peace, then step by step began to make his ascent, and to unite in his own persons the functions of the Senate, the magistracy, and the legislature. Opposition there was none. The boldest spirits had succumbed on stricken fields or by proscription lists, while the rest of the nobility found a cheerful acceptance of slavery the smoothest road to wealth and office, and, as they had thriven on revolution, stood now for the new order and safety in preference to the old order and adventure. Nor was the state of affairs unpopular in the provinces, where administration by the Senate and people had been discredited by the feuds of the magnates and the greed of the officials, against which there was but frail protection in a legal system for ever deranged by force, by favoritism, or, in the last resort, by gold. Meanwhile, to consolidate his power, Augustus raised Claudius Marcellus, his sister's son and a mere stripling, to the pontificate and curial aedileship. Marcus Agrippa, no aristocrat, but a good soldier, and his partner in victory, he honoured with 2 successive consulates, and a little later, on the death of Marcellus, selected him as a son-in-law. Each of his stepchildren, Tiberius Nero and Claudius Drusus, was given the title of imperator, though his family proper was still intact, for he had admitted Agrippa's children, Gaius and Lucius, to the Caesarean hearth, and even during their minority had shown, under a veil of reluctance, a consuming desire to see them consuls designate with the title princes of the youth. When Agrippa gave up the ghost, untimely fate, or the treachery of their stepmother Livia, cut off both Lucius and Caius Caesar, Lucius on his road to the Spanish armies, Caius, wounded and sick, on his return from Armenia. Drusus had long been dead, and of the stepsons Nero survived alone. On him all centred. Adopted as son, as colleague in the empire, as consort of the tribunician power, he was paraded through all the armies, not as before by the secret diplomacy of his mother, but openly at her injunction. For so firmly had she riveted her chains upon the aged Augustus that he banished to the Isle of Planasia his one remaining grandson, Agrippa Postumus, who, though guiltless of a virtue, and confident brute-like in his physical strength, had been convicted of no open scandal. Yet, curiously enough, he placed Drusus's son Germanicus at the head of 8 legions on the Rhine, and ordered Tiberius to adopt him. It was one safeguard the more, even though Tiberius had already an adult son under his roof. War at the time was none, except an outstanding campaign against the Germans, waged more to redeem the prestige lost with Quintilius Varus and his army than from any wish to extend the empire, or with any prospect of an adequate recompense. At home all was calm. The officials carried the old names. The younger men had been born after the victory of Actium. Most even of the elder generation during the civil wars, few indeed were left who had seen the Republic.